I gathered it's from your PhD, which includes art as well. So that in itself is worth getting the book, let's be honest. So over to you, Jennifer.
Right, I'm a bit nervous because I've got Ken Robinson up. I'm a bit worried anybody might think he's about to appear, but he isn't. So I was going to say to you, first of all, that I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you very much for including me, Catherine, in your group. I'm so pleased to be with so many interesting disability writers as well, and I'm hoping that my work will inform some of the things you're going to be saying as well, because although my theory is to improve through teaching, I do think that it's relevant to other social research. So if anybody has any bright ideas about how that may be true, let me know at the end. So I spent 17 years doing this research. I passed my PhD in 2010, spent 7 years thinking about it in my ivory tower. I haven't presented or taught or lectured for about 7 or 8 years, so please make allowances for me. And what else was I going to say? Help. It's been a complicated journey, so no pressure explaining it all in 10 minutes. You know, you can imagine. Right. So I produced the book that I think would have been useful when I was a teacher, way back when. I think that my ideas came out of teaching young offenders in a prison, primary and secondary teachers in various schools, and also teaching in a secondary special unit for a long time, quite a long time. And all the time, as I was dealing with these difficult children, I was thinking something else is going on here. There are elephants in the room, and the elephants were feelings and emotions, needless to say, if you think about the title of my book. And my theory, and I was very much aware that it was my feelings and emotions that were involved as well, and so I started investigating them eventually when I started to do research with Rebecca, who's at the back of the room. She cannot sit there silently, my supervisor, who I wasn't expecting to turn up, but lovely to see you. And I remember that you and Carol, when you were sorting out my PhD, I remember you saying it's a very strange animal, this PhD, and it was, because it was psychology and education. So I'd come at it from my teacher's perspective, and I ended up working out a sort of social attitude or research method out of doing all my teaching. So in 2006, Ken Robinson said, we had to radically rethink intelligence in education, and I realised at that point that that was actually what I seemed to be doing, strangely and amazingly. Good teachers are in an ideal position to research intelligence and to develop best practice, and that was what I tried to do. I tried to collaborate with my learners, and I studied 3 groups in depth. And I sort of sat sideways looking at them and asking them how they felt about what they were doing. I had various methods which are given in my book for working this out. Obviously they were my methods, but they were eclectic, and I'm hoping that when people see the sort of thing I did, they'll develop their own from those. And I'm sure that the other writers in this group will have done that in their books. I'm looking forward to having a look at them actually and seeing what they've done. So, choose the slide. Okay, so we were saying teachers anyway in action research process. We produce data for planning, we assess work in action and we evaluate, but unfortunately teachers don't always realise that's what they're doing. They moan and groan about researchers from university coming and telling them what to do, and they don't realise that they're already doing it and that they are perfectly capable of justifying their methods themselves, which I'm hoping will change. I think it is starting to, hopefully, as it trends towards that. My groups of people that I work with, the first ones were school refusers, and I worked as a home tutor. And I got the kids, the teenagers who were off school. They were not behaviour problems, they were people who just wouldn't go to school. We couldn't work out why they wouldn't go to school. As a teacher in school, I wouldn't have known why they wouldn't go to school, but I went into their homes and slowly worked out some reasons why they may not have been going to school and some of their problems. I found in every case there were mitigating circumstances why they were off school and that their emotions had affected them very much. At the end of every lesson, I got them to make a comment about how they felt about that lesson, and I recorded the data. And I've recorded their stories and their voices in my book. So then went on to mentor teacher colleagues. I think Rebecca suggested that to me actually, and that was rather fun. I found out exactly what they thought about the education system. These comments are in my book as well, including some quite rude pictures of what they thought about their headmistress, their piles of books and the clock as they tried to mark and all this sort of stuff, their emotional problems. That was interesting because they would always say they were drawing, because I do this sort of art mentoring thing. They would be drawing, and then the next time I saw them, a month later, at the end of the session, I'd say, "What was that about then?" And they'd say, "Nothing, nothing, nothing." The next session, they'd walk straight in and go, "You know what that picture was about? This is what it was about." So that was interesting. It was a way of getting at their subconscious processes. I then went on and I evaluated a children's primary school creativity festival with 6 primary schools. It took me 6 months, and I trotted around and watched artists and teachers solving sort of research problems themselves, and we recorded the children's comments as well, so it was a sort of range of evaluation. The teachers, the artists and the children worked out how to evaluate themselves to some extent, and at the end of the 6 months we had a festival at the Lowry Theatre, and we got the kids to write, somebody had the idea of the kids writing their comments on an empty wall, those sort of things, and we found different ways to collect the data, how they felt about it, and that was generally quite successful. So I evaluated that and I kept the data. So as I looked at these groups, my confidence grew because I could see the logic behind how they were feeling about what they were doing, and so that helped to inform my research. I then went on to examine psychological, clinical and neurocognitive research, and the further I've gone, the more it seems to back me up as I've gone on. I've now just realised I need to write another book because I have a whole load of new neurocognitive data which supports my theory. So, but it isn't so much a theory as a truth, I think. I think I uncovered a truth. I think it was a truth that wasn't fashionable, hasn't been fashionable for a long time. We've ignored our feelings and emotions for a long time. We've refused in education to think that they're important, although there've always been wonderful teachers that have worked with that, and they've done wonderful work. But the people in authority have generally not thought this was important. We could just do tick boxing and ignore all that, or we'll just accumulate knowledge. But in actual fact, feelings and emotions are part of our thinking process, where they actually are. So, I'm talking about it here, but this is my artistic, non-worded impression of what's happening inside my head some of the time. So it's not scientific, but it is data because it's my data. That's my view. Therefore, it is data. And the date when I did the painting was data. And you can make what you like of it, if you see what I mean. So, I don't think I will read all of that, so I'll just move on, because I don't want to get into trouble. My theory claims that our feelings and emotions are logical in their own terms. So within your head, everybody's individual head, our feelings and emotions are joining together logically. Whether or not they make any sense to anybody else is beside the point. In that moment, they're making sense, is my argument. Now, I can have all sorts of arguments, and I have had, about rationality and logic. and it stands up there. Logic is something you can prove, but in actual fact, within our heads, when our neurons are firing, we're making logical connections. They may turn out not to be right, but we need to acknowledge that, I think. So listening, I've also found another thing was that listening to learners actually helps them learn. If you surface how they're feeling about stuff, you're actually helping them to learn. They don't necessarily all have to talk to the teacher, they can talk to each other. But this is actually part of how we think, I believe. So I'm expecting lots of criticism of this. And you can imagine way back when, sort of 10 years ago, addressing a group of academics about their emotions and feelings and how it's part of their intelligence, you could almost hear an intake of breath. Oh, I don't want to go there, I don't want to think about it. It might involve looking at my feelings and emotions, and I don't want to go there. And to be honest, I had to do this myself, which sometimes was quite difficult. But you do learn by it, I have to say. So, I examined learning theory and psychology, and when this confirmed my ideas as well as the practical work, my confidence grew again. So, we have arrived at my final slide, which is jolly good. So, having re-examined clinical and neurocognitive research, and finding that it confirms my ideas, which were just an intuition at the beginning, I think that we have to understand that they are going on all the time, whether we acknowledge them or not. They are below our commentary, our conscious commentary. They're just joining, they're doing it. The neurons are firing in a state of discombobulation. They're all firing like mad. They're not going to a rhythm, they're not working together. They are just firing, apparently. This is the latest neurocognitive research. When we go to sleep, our filing system comes into play and we start sorting them out. And that's what our dreaming process is when we go into REM. So these feelings I'm talking about, of course, are physical as well, and they involve our sensory inputs and our memories connecting. So when you're dreaming, you're connecting those. And it seems to be, and there's only really, I've been struggling with this for a long time, but now it does seem to be accepted. So I think it's quite encouraging for all of us. And I think the other writers who've been talking, are going to be talking about disability issues, will probably see connections there that they can relate to. So I'm going to say now, good luck if you do any more of your own research, and thank you for listening. And also, thanks to all the huge number of people who've helped me to produce this book and collaborated with me.